First off, thanks you guys for coming to our first live event. It's super exciting. To begin, how many people have heard of fish sauce? Awesome. That's huge. All right. How many people have actually listened to an episode? Sweet. For those who haven't, subscribe on iTunes. You can just pull up your iTunes app and subscribe, or subscribe after the show if you like what you saw. For a little intro, my name is Elton. I am one of the co-founders, co-hosts of Fish Sauce. That's my side hustle. For my full-time hustle, I am the general manager for Northern California for WeWork, the beautiful space that you guys are in here today. This is one of 11 locations. Cheers to the WeWork family back there. And yeah, so that's what I do for my full-time and then side hustle.
Cool. My name is Wilson Kai. I'm the other co-founder and co-host of Fish Sauce. And I'm currently a student at Harvard Business School. And this past summer, or most of the summer, I did work at venture capital, focused on real estate technology. And the other half, I spent fish saucing with Mr. Elton Kwok here. So, and it's been a super busy summer working, bunch of stuff, interviewing, back-to-back days, hustling, and really coming up to this event today. So very, very excited for today.
Cool. So without further ado, we're going to introduce our first guest for tonight. It's Bebe Chueh. She is the co-founder of Atrium.
Hi, guys.
So we're going to go ahead and get started. Just a little background about what fish sauce is. So Wilson and I started about a year and a half ago when we were having my housewarming, and when I came to San Francisco, and we're drinking a little bit too many Yamazakis, and we were thinking about how can we be unique and different, and how can we inspire people and influence others to take a leap of faith. We both came from corporate backgrounds at that time. I came from finance, and Wilson came from consulting, and we both realized, hey, like we no longer want to pursue the traditional path of doing what our parents told us. We wanted to be different. We wanted to do something that where we can pave our own path. And we always go to the Tenderloin and eat Vietnamese food and things like that. And we were like, fish sauce, how can we find our secret sauce? And how can we inspire others to find theirs too? And then that came to the podcast where we interviewed a season of different interviewees and guests from executives of Square to Google to Facebook to Caviar to new co-founders and businessmen and women as well. And now we're about to start our season 2 this upcoming fall, so we're super excited. So we're going to start with Bebe.
One thing.
Yeah. What's up?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So Elton hit on a lot of stuff that we've been thinking about, sort of the early days, how we got started doing season 1 and what we're doing season 2. But we want to share a little bit about our vision, because right before this, people were asking us, what is fish sauce all about? What is it going to be? And we thought we'll take maybe like 3 minutes to talk a little bit about it. So when we think about fish sauce as a vision, we think of 3 pillars. So the first pillar is what you're seeing now. It is the podcast. It's the brand that we're trying to scale globally. This is what we're trying to do here. And we think podcast is a really big industry. 1 out of 5 people in the US are listening to it. It's growing 20% year on year. So it's a very big industry, FYI. So that's the first reason why we chosen this outlet. We thought it was a great way to reach more people, because we really don't have much capital to start with. We're bootstrapping right now. And the second part is that after all these interviews, we found a lot of interest in a lot of the type of hospitality part of it, startups that really have in-person experiences, call it restaurants, retail, type of these experiences that we really value. So perhaps the second pillar is we could start maybe a restaurant one day, like a whiskey lounge, ramen bar, whatever that makes us like full and satiates that hunger. So that's the second pillar. We think a lot about in-person experiences that bring friends and family together. The third pillar we do think about in the past few months is how do we scalably invest in other ventures in hospitality? And we think of that perhaps as fish sauce venture. And if we start to have this community where we have founders, operators, and investors all in one place and really want to support each other's mission, I think we have something here. And if we can build capital and find companies that either are of the Airbnbs, of companies like the Soul Cycle of Experiences, or even companies that we worked at, WeWork, the beautiful place we're seeing here, or Square, all these are empowering in-person experiences of small businesses. So we really think thoughtfully about that. And if not investing in it, maybe we can at least build a community that actually can help each other out, if not through us directly. So that's our fish sauce empire that we're building. So if you want to be part of it, come on by. We're always looking for volunteers or anything, or sweat equity. So thank you.
So yeah, let's get to it. Bebe, in less than 2 minutes, can you share with us your upbringing and how you got to where you are today?
So I am a Shanghainese-born Chinese American. Came to the U.S. when I was 9 with my parents to Ohio, which was quite a culture shock, and then moved my way back into Asian saturation to the West Coast. So this is, new to me with such a room full of people who look like me. I started off as a lawyer and then pivoted my way to being an entrepreneur in practicing law. So I'm primarily an entrepreneur, but I still innovate in the area of law.
So you just co-founded Atrium with Justin Kahn, and most recently raised $10.2 million from $10.5 million.
That's a whiskey lounge right there.
I know.
Be
That
careful.
really is. That really is. That's the capital for it. And you raised it from 92 different investors. Can you tell us about that process?
Yeah, so we were called the biggest party round in the Valley, and because there's usually a round of the first round, especially for a tech startup, consists of probably like 5 or so investors, right, to make up this, and with a lead investor. So we had 92, and usually this is a sign of either totally shady business where you're trying to raise from everyone in the world, or straight up brilliance, and hopefully this is what we're proving to be the latter case. So basically, what the principle is, in business is basically sell before you build, right? And it's so getting these investors happens to be a crucial part of our go-to-market strategy, because Atrium is a venture practice law firm, so we are serving entrepreneurs and VCs as their lawyer, right? So these are our customers. So our customers in this case happen to also be people who fund businesses. So we essentially pitched them to fund us, but in doing so also pitch them to become our customers.
Very cool. So a lot of our, when we're starting Fish Sauce, we have a lot of questions with legal. We won't go into those details right now, but just questions of legal questions, right, of any startups. And a lot of our audience are potentially founders, and they'll have run into legal questions of their own. What are the top legal questions that startups will run into that Atrium is here to serve them?
Yeah, so we do everything from incorporation to IPO, right? So the backbone of our practice is managing how you buy and sell shares of your company. So, and that has to do with, at first it's your co-founders, you guys are sharing the ownership of the company, and then you are going to sell some shares to employees, right? And then you sell some shares to investors, and then other investors, until you sell it to the public. So that's like the backbone of what we support. And stemming off of that is like a myriad of legal issues like trademarks and patents and things you encounter along the way that is relevant to your business, some more than others. And of course, we also have specialists and experts to help you along the way as well.
So since we first interviewed in the beginning of the summer, actually, it was in June when we first interviewed and then released Bebe's episode, how much has changed? Where have you gone from June to now, September?
Yeah, so so when we were speaking, we had about our founding team, which is 5 people plus a trickle of developers who joined us, and then now we're closing in on 25 people, in a very, very rapid period of time. And we are looking actually for our next office.
We work. Our
Yeah,
sales
yeah, yeah.
lead back there. She can help you out.
This is all scripted. So basically, yeah, so we're looking for a space to hold 70 in the next year to scale up the business. And I gotta say that even though I've been an entrepreneur before, I've never been in a high growth startup before. So this is a challenge for me to stay on top of the headcount.
Yeah, can you share more about the experience? Because a lot of times for founders, they're doing everything in the beginning, and in the past few months, you're thinking about potentially office space, but you could be thinking about other things like marketing or acquisition. What goes through your mind every single day? What are the top 3 type of tasks you think about?
Yeah, I think that it's totally true. I was talking to actually the Boba guys earlier too, and we were saying, like, he was like, we don't really need legal right now because I'm just used to being scrappy and whatnot. And same here. Like my last business, I grew it organically to 30 people and then sold it to LegalZoom, and then suddenly managed other people, right? But there's like a gap. So I was prepared to be a manager when I entered the situation. But here I'm, starting off, and then in a matter of months, just trying to stay on top of like a human pyramid. And I think that the challenges that are our communication, right? Like learning everyone. It's like a live puzzle. Like every person that enters a room, yes, they responded to a job description, but what are their actual strengths? And like how do we empower that, but then fill the gap with,
How do you test for that? So you're saying like stuff that's already on paper versus what they actually do? Because I think people are really good at just writing the resume or getting someone that can just recreate a really pretty one, right?
Yeah.
But how do you actually test for real life skills when that's what they have to prove on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think we tend to start, to the extent possible, we give contracts first, right? So we're like, hey, let's do a test little project. So as an example, our own 92 investors closing our own round was actually the perfect test case for both lawyers and engineers. So we hired a couple lawyers, and then we hired a couple of engineers, and we're like, you know what? Can you guys work together to create a tool to, catalyze the process of closing 92 investors, right? And mistakes are cool because it's our own round, so we're not embarrassing anyone. So minimize the risk, and then watch them work, basically. And we found, how people react under stress, and then what their communication strengths are, weaknesses are, and then we decide how to slot them into positions where their strengths are empowered.
So you told everyone how to get into Atrium. What are the most high priority jobs that you have for people who are looking for jobs?
Yes, we need lawyers first and foremost. So I'm trying to recruit as many lawyers as possible. And we got rid of the billable hours, so we're working, on a project basis. And thus far, the most exciting thing has been to watch lawyers reform under a different business model. And we joke that in the marketing department we're going to have because they're no longer billing all the time, right? Like, so for me, like, I'm not billing either, so I can come to this event and not think like, man, this is costing me like $900 right now, So I think it's a fundamental lifestyle change for lawyers, and it's really exciting to do that. So lawyers, and then engineers, right? So we want to, the engineers are the reason why the lawyers are able to work more efficiently, and so that problem solving together is really fun.
So a lot of people, we're co-founders, the Boba guys are co-founders, and you have co-founders as well. What is the secret sauce to finding the ideal co-founder?
So I think the ideal co-founder, luck, and then also luck and contract, because if you're not lucky, then then the contract spells out exactly what happens when things don't go ideally, right? So it's like, get your prenup. Yeah, exactly.
Ask Boba guys the same question.
Right. But I mean, obviously you want to work with each other as much as possible. So the first time around, we just went on instinct, my first company. No one had experience, everyone's bootstrapping, and you're trying to find people who have competencies that you don't in an obvious way, right? So it's like, you code, I don't. Great. Like, that is sounds like a great partnership, you know? And then now, however, like we're all very experienced. So like the entire founding team has track record, right? And that is more of the basis for which we hire people is track record.
Do you mind sharing a little about that co-founder experience? I know you mentioned like instinct, just a feel of it, but how did you guys, find like Justin Khan and your other co-founder? Can you share a little more about that stories and some details there?
Yeah, so Justin is, you guys may know, he's very much 1 degree away from every Asian person. So here, and very much like a tech celebrity. So he was, a part of Justin TV. That's him live casting, right? And then Twitch, which is now upstairs, it went in to become Twitch and sold to Amazon. And now post-Amazon, it's growing like crazy right now. With his co-founder as the CEO. So he then has been, a YC partner and investor and, coach entrepreneurs all day long. It's great. And then, so how we met is, we have a lot of mutual friends in common, but sometimes a lot of, in fact, like both of us did one thing that led to one another, which is to tell everyone in one short sentence what you're looking for, right? So he was telling everyone, just broadcasting, he's like, I'm looking for people who are lawyers and entrepreneurs.
How do you broadcast? Through Snapchat? Because I feel like I've always seen a Snapchat giving advice to entrepreneurs. Is that what he does?
So Snapchat, and then Justin has a term called scene stir. So he's like, you go to this scene, and in this, so in this economy, there are only a couple places that people go all the time.
Where are the hot
right?
spots?
Well, you're in one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. We
Scripted.
work. And then, but also, there are just like lots of places, right? Like there's like the Battery where people go, the Modernist, right? And then you go to like YC events, like that kind of thing. So investor demo days and like whatever. So there's like hot spots and you go, and then every person you talk to, just tell them exactly what you're looking for, and like we each did that. So like I was broadcasting, hey, my earnout has ended, I'm bored. Like that was my message. Like someone tell me if there's a great opportunity, right? And then his message was like, I'm looking for a lawyer who's an entrepreneur. And then, another founding team was like, I'm also not happy with like my current situation. I'm looking to start another company, right? And so then you just find each other because people are your eyes and ears.
Speaking of seeing, we actually met at a event/party.
Yeah.
And then I pitched Bebe about fish sauce, true hustling. And I was like, you have to be a guest on our podcast. And then a couple weeks later, you became on. So thank you.
There you go, exactly. Like, I hear you.
So I guess our last question, or one of our last questions is, we have a lot of founders or entrepreneurs in the room as well, and a lot of them are interested in raising their first dollar. What is that process like?
Show of hands. Who are the entrepreneurs in the room? Anyone? Okay.
Or interested. Interested potentially.
Secret
okay. I see a few
entrepreneurs.
in the
Okay,
back.
great.
Don't lie, I see you. I see you down now.
And then who's like, raising money or whatever, wondering, okay. Okay, great. That's great. I'll speak to all of you. Yes. So what is the process? Okay, so you start small, like you do the whole, start with your friends and family first. So that's very important because if you can't even, convince your friends and family to believe in you, it's a little hard to do that with people who are colder, right, in relationships. So that's the first round, and then next, angels who are interested, and then VCs. I understand that people probably have heard that before. I'm happy to expand after this event.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So I think yesterday I read an article on Strictly VC, or a few days ago. They said that if you're raising a VC fund or even trying to raise capital, if people have not already mentioned that they want to invest in you before you're even raising capital, it means you probably shouldn't raise capital. That's what he said, he or she said. And I think there's some truth in that, right? People that already believe it in person, when you don't even have the idea yet or have your team yet, it goes a long way. So find those people who have already soft committed before you even raise, like family, friends, who are unconditionally going to love you and your idea, right?
Yeah, like fundraising is in the entrepreneur world, your resume or your track record. Like there's nothing else to go on at this point because your idea has not been validated. So whoever you can convince and can show that through monetary, commitment is a track record.
Got it. Before I ask the last question, we will have a small Q&A if anyone has questions. To be thinking about questions that you have right after this question. So in fish sauce fashion, we're going to ask you, what is your secret sauce? And both literally and figuratively, if you guys haven't listened to the podcast yet, and perhaps a time when you've used that secret sauce at work or personal.
Oh yeah. So this is like the same question from the podcast, and I'll repeat it here. So my secret sauce, figuratively is just taking care of yourself emotionally through an entrepreneurial journey, because it's never like the thing that you think breaks you that breaks you, right? It's your response to it. So if you run out of money, some people, they get up and they get it again. Some people don't. And it's that difference, that response to failure, that is the distinguishing characteristic. But you have to be fully healthy and happy and not burnt out in order to respond that way. So my secret sauce is emotional run rate, right? So that's that. My actual secret sauce is like sriracha aioli. I love it. It's like so Asian American. It's like Asian and American and hipster and goes on everything. So it's great, yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Is there a time that you applied that secret sauce or anything, both the food and your figurative secret sauce?
Yeah, so when I'm really upset with my food, I put sriracha aioli all over it, and it makes it better. So it's, yeah. But yeah, no, that's absolutely it. Like I especially since I've experienced burnt out before in my first startup, and I know that no amount of one person's 24 hours can solve any problem. So you just have to be like well rested and do it in a good way. So yeah.
Cool. So we're gonna transition into questions from the audience, and we're gonna pick about 3 questions from the audience to ask you. So the first question is, as a female co-founder, are there challenges you face that males may not experience?
Okay. Okay, sorry. So one by one. Yeah. So where's Lisa in the room? Yay! Lisa. So Lisa's on my team, and we actually have this channel on Slack called Women of Atrium. And yeah. So it's actually really cool. So we go out for a happy hour, like the Women of Atrium. And we actually say, we're like, you know what? If we saw a bunch of guys do that, we would be so upset. So, but having said that, like, I do think that there are gender differences, but it may not be like a bad thing, So like we do tend to care more about culture. I think the women do, right? Like we want to work in this lovely environment and not like bro desks, So that is actually kind of a challenge, because we would go look for office space. The guys are like, this is great. And I'm like, I don't want to work here, And then it's like, justify your why, and it's like, well, I can't like be productive here, right? So like, there's like stuff like that that's like obvious. And then, and then in communication, I think that, the men I work with are great. And then you just have to like be more assertive and, say what's on your mind. So they usually listen.
Cool. I have a question here too. It says, how is the stress and pressure difference between being an entrepreneur and difference between working at a corporate job? So the stress difference between entrepreneur and corporate job.
Yeah, actually, absolutely. When you're an entrepreneur, the buck stops with you. So that's the stress, is that you are constantly thinking, if I don't, you have a lot of urgency because you have the full control. So if you don't do anything, the company doesn't go anywhere, right? So that's one type of stress. In a corporate job, it's you don't have that much control. So the stress becomes, how do I, hit my numbers, or like swim in this narrow swim lane in a very good fashion, but also manage the people around you, right? And so that is really hard as well, in its own way. So.
Yeah, a quick follow-up question. Is it possible to be an entrepreneur in a corporate setting? Have you seen that work? Have you personally seen that work?
Absolutely. There's a term called intrapreneur, which is that type of person. The very obvious place would be a corporate R&D department. So like Samsung has one, right? Like Cisco has, like every big company has now like an R&D function. Even Westfield Labs is like Westfield's R&D center, and you're working within the large corporation, but with the goal of innovating for the corporation. So absolutely.
Cool. Another question, and the last question we'll ask you is, how do you deal with stresses or challenge?
In general?
In general.
I was like, so exercising, like for sure, right? Like sometimes sleep and exercise can give you a whole new perspective. And then next thing, just like understanding what the triggers are. Once you understand what the triggers are, you can see it, and prioritize it. You can start to understand what solutions may be available to address that. So.
Cool. Thanks so much, Bebe. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Give Bebe a round of applause. Bebe's going to stick around, so if you want to ask her questions after we interview the Boba guys, feel free to ask her a question.
Cool. So next we have Boba guys, so if you guys can come up right now, that'd be great. Let's go, Andrew, Ben. Oh, you did. That's what we do to our fans, too. I'll just do a quick intro and say that in 2014, a few years ago, when I moved out here for Square and Elton moved out here for WeWork, we were actually looking around for good boba, and we found Boba guys. Didn't know us, obviously, then, and ever since we've been idolizing them, like, oh, maybe one day we can be just like them when we grow up, right? And fast forward, it happened a lot faster than we thought in terms of meeting them. 2 years later, we started Fish Sauce, and the first people on our list was actually Boba guys. I still remember the day on your website, we read through your story of your guys' lab coats, two of you guys, and talking about, anyway, you guys will talk about it later, but all these details, and we were just so enamored. And sitting here with four of us up here is really a dream come true. I honestly mean it. It's crazy.
I just want to say we're really proud of Elton and Wilson too. When they had this idea, did you tell everybody what you wanted to call this?
Oh my God, we're too embarrassed.
Yeah.
We heard it and we're like, no. I think it was Tech Ninjas, right?
Yes.
No. Too broy. I think I said too broy.
We wanted it to be like you guys.
Yeah.
But Fish Sauce was awesome. When we heard that, we're like, oh, they got it. They're gonna do awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People thought we did like fixing IT for people, like tech bros. But anyway, we'll jump right into it. And so the first question I want to ask you guys is actually the story that we've been so enamored with, but we want to hear from your words. How did you guys meet? How did you guys decide at that moment that you guys would become co-founders and that chemistry was there? How did you guys think about it?
Well, before we start, who knows what boba is?
Who knows what blob is? You don't know that joke.
Oh, this is gonna be easy. Then. Okay, so Andrew and I, we met at this company called Timbuktu. They make messenger bags and backpacks here in San Francisco. They've been around 25 years now, so they've been around a while. They're still very, very indie, but we were the only two Asian guys kind of in the company, except for this old guy. And it was Daniel Kim. He's the only one.
Like a sewer.
Yeah. So we were the only two Asian guys, and we kind of joined at the same time, and they were just getting a brand new round of people, and we met over ping pong. Actually, he was the only guy that wanted two Asian guys playing ping pong.
That's why WeWork has ping pong right here.
Exactly.
Right?
Ping pong in the back.
Yeah, and we would end up playing a lot of foosball together, which surprisingly is a good test for like if you're a good co-founder or not. Actually, because we're both very, very competitive. But the way we met was, we worked together at Timbuktu, and the more that we got to know each other, we were like, wow, we really think alike, and we're both like do-gooders, and we always think alike, and we thought we would like, oh, maybe we'll start a company together, and so we started thinking about a company, and we're like, what should we do? And because we were we're ex-corporate guys, I was in advertising, he was in marketing, and we wanted to build a brand. And but we were like, oh, what brand should we do? You know, should we stay in the apparel, soft goods world? And at the time, we really liked Everlane was just coming out on the scene, and they were one of the it was so mind blowing at the time because they were radical transparency, right? And so we were like, well, what? Oh crap! They took our idea. We really wanted to do that. So we kept thinking about what's our startup, and we would always drink boba at lunch. And one day we were like, "Wow, maybe this is it." But the long story is that there wasn't like Asian food or food in general that was very, very transparent at the time, and so it was like really remarkable to kind of combine the two and say like, could we build a food company that was like super, super transparent from the get-go, and what would that look like? And so that's kind of how it kicked off. I don't know if you want to add some.
Well, I had the part that has to do with cultural, because especially the name Fish Sauce or Boba Guys, a large part was like he grew up in Texas too. What people don't know is like our full backstories. He grew up in Texas in this really rural. I don't even know how many thousand people in Wharton, Texas.
It's like 9,000.
9,000
only
people.
Asian.
And I grew up in New Jersey, so I grew up in Woodbridge, New Jersey. Any Jersey people? Usually, woo. Okay, so I grew up in Woodbridge is not. It's a township. If you don't even know what that means, that's how small it is. So it's a township. And so when we were talking about whatever we do, could it be something that could be a little bigger than the product itself? And Boba, we thought, was one of them. And the other company we were thinking about was Blue Bottle. This is, again, 2010 and 2011. And nobody did, like, high quality, what we would now call, like, hipster Boba or whatever. But nobody really thought of it in 2010-11. And so we saw Everlane and we saw Blue Bottle. We were like, if we did it with Boba, and we can maybe bridge cultures and convince people that Boba is not just an Asian thing or a kid's drink, could we change the whole tide? I think nowadays, if you guys probably could see in San Francisco or in New York City, and we're about to do LA, most people say we are probably the instigators of all this. So it's been crazy because we did this because we wanted people to know where we came from, because we grew up in neighborhoods and communities where people didn't know what it's not figurative, like my dumplings were. Like it was just like, they were just like, what are you eating? And all that kind of stuff. And then for those who don't know, it's like the hot topic of the last week, the New York Times article with the blobs in your boba. And then I was the one who had to talk to the New York Times editor and hold back the whole Asian community. It's like 21 million Asian Americans. You're like, Andrew, go get them. And I'm like, hold on. They were trying, and I was in LA last week. Everybody in LA was like, how come you didn't like lay into them harder? And then other people were like, oh, I'm glad you didn't like start this cultural war. And then the pho guys are gonna come in and the boba guys, and then that's not how it's supposed to work. So we didn't think that was gonna happen, but now looking back, we're like, wow, from that first day 6 years ago, it's been 6 years, that was why we existed. We did it because we knew we probably were a little more different than most companies with our backgrounds. And thankfully, this is NAAAP, so a lot of people are like, do I want to leave corporate? Is it worth it? Which I'm sure will be your question. Am I just doing the whole interview and
go for it? No, go for it. You don't need us.
Sit tight. We got it.
A little advertisement. Yeah. Okay. So then, at the end of it, does that experience help? And I think the storytelling, the marketing, the execution of it definitely helped because we were ex-corporate. So when you think about the idea, the inception of the idea to where we are now, like it was just this massive kind of culmination of things that we hoped would work. We just didn't know at the time.
What is the mission of Boba Guys? I know every startup, every company has a mission that attracts employees and talent to come join them. What is the Boba Guys mission?
I mean, I think Andrew touched on it. Our mission is to bridge cultures. Like, I think the New York Times article is like a really good example of that. I had the call. I was in New York. As soon as I touched down, I get a cryptic email that from an AOL account that says, "Hey, I'm the New York Times," and I call up the woman, and wait, is this on tape? She was a older woman from the Upper West Side, and I was like, I know it. This is gonna be. I'm gonna have to do the unabridged version of it. And it was, but it's essentially we've been doing this since we started. Was explaining what we do, because if you go to the Midwest, like people don't know what boba is, and so like we weren't actually that mad when the article came out. I think the headline could have been worded a little bit differently in the New York Times article, but there's just not everyone knows about. We're in a bubble, and we've been around it for so long. We grew up with it, and so that's kind of been our mission, is to bridge cultures. And if you go into our stores, even the way that we look, though, our stores don't look like any other boba shop. It's because we do look up to Blue Bottle and Phil's and these other places where it's a little bit more elevated. It's more inviting. There's not like a huge menu of like 60 different drinks, and it's like a huge paradox of choice, and you're trying to decide what you want. And so all those things are trying to bring people in. And so I think that's always been our mission, and so it helps like guide us on what to do. And even if you look at our staff, it's super diverse. We get a lot of flack because they're like, is there even any Asians that work at Boba Guys? But that's our mission.
Very cool. So take us back to the early days. When we thought about fish sauce, the first day that we launched our episode, the first day that we had our launch party, we had our celebration. Take us back to the first day that you guys opened your first store or pop-up store that you consider your first time selling boba. What does that magical moment feel like?
I would say we kind of had 3 phases. Some of you guys know we were one of the original pop-ups. If you guys don't know what pop-ups are, they're basically like our business inside of another business. So at the time, I think right a year before, our friends Mission Chinese did theirs in the Mission. And then we came right after. And we knew Danny and Anthony, and we were like, oh, can we do something with drinks? And there was no such thing as drink pop-ups. I mean, this is 2010 and 11, right? We take it for granted. Didn't that exist back then? And so when we were starting, I think we had this really janky wall, and we cut a hole. Our friends who did Ken Ramen had this like hole. Was anybody there in those times? No, nobody.
No one.
Go way back. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they could attest. Like, it was like this weird wall that we put up. We cut a hole, and we had this like makeshift sign that was basically like a lemonade stand for Asians.
Yeah, but we went. Remember, we went to Kinko's and we had that humongous logo.
Oh yeah, we went to Kinko's. Yeah. Well, they wouldn't let us put it up.
They
right?
wouldn't. Yeah, originally they wouldn't let us put it up, but our style has always been like, loud, proud, big, and just
like them.
That's the way we get along. You guys are hustlers, but we had this. It was like big, huge logo.
Yeah, we had this big fish sauce bottle somewhere.
Yeah, that we were super proud of, and so we were just like all or nothing on the pop up.
Yeah, we sold out that first day, and I think that was when we were like, okay. When you're being an entrepreneur, I always separate the conceptual piece, will this work conceptually, with can this make money, and then lastly, can this be like a full business? And I kind of separate them. So that first day, we were like, oh, I think this could work. And then we weren't even thinking, we had full-time jobs. We didn't quit our jobs until 3.5 years into Boba Guys.
That's crazy.
That was 3 stores.
Yeah, 3 stores.
I had graduated business school, and I was always making fun of my business school venture. I was venture capital. They were like, oh, you guys have no work-life balance. But I had no work-life balance. And then it was like 50, 60 hours. I was in brand management. I did CPG. And then 50, 60 hours. And then I did 30 hours at Boba Guys. I lost a lot of weekends. Couldn't go to a lot of weddings, baby showers. It was nuts. So we had to kind of make the sacrifice. But that was actually how we didn't know this was going to work. We were so conservative. We're like, should we quit? You're like, no. It's just the ride. Let's just keep on the ride. And then finally, I think about 2.5 years ago, we did it full time. So anyways, I think the real second inflection point, though, was when we went to New York. And I don't know if anybody was in that New York time. That New York, there was this pop-up. You can see it on the internet. It was 3.5 hour wait around New York City blocks on 150 Broadway. And it was upstairs. You could read about this. And we didn't know. And we actually felt so guilty. We hired a musician. We had a musician friend. We're like, what are people going to do? Wait for $4 boba. So we're like, we hired our friend Mara to play music while they're waiting in line.
The Pocky team gave out.
Pocky got a hold of it, like the Asian Pocky. And so they're like, I had never seen so many collections of Asians. And so they brought they drove up in a truck.
A street team.
And they handed out Pocky. And it was really fun. And I think the New Yorkers really loved it. But that was when right when we quit. We're like, we're doing this. That was pretty much the time where we knew this could have potential. Again, people were always like, oh, you must have known. I'm like, no, we wouldn't have stayed at our jobs and almost burned out if we knew this the whole time.
Many people refer Boba Guys to Blue Bottle and Phil's because of the rapid expansion and the good branding. And I think the last time we spoke, Boba Guys had, 3 or 4 stores, and now you've probably added 3 to 5 more in just the last year and a half, which is tremendous. Congratulations on that. How do you guys do it? How does expansion work at Boba Guys? And how much more do you guys want to expand?
So here's I think what people don't say. Ben and I pride ourselves on being transparent. So we'll answer like kind of the big FAQs is, did you guys raise money? And then how did you use that money to expand? How are you expanding? So we have 10 stores right now. All that is the only round. We took one friends and family round. As Bebe said, it was friends and families who really bet on us. Some of them you guys probably know because they're public people. They were just fans of us, and they said, are you raising? Are you raising? And then finally we said, okay, we might take a loan. So we did a convertible note. So we did that of $1 million. And without getting into it, like we can pay them back today. So that's how it's so we're essentially homegrown. It'd kind of be a dick move, by the way. Don't take money from people and then pay it all back, because then it's a glorified loan and they get really mad. So that's how we did it. And then our first 10 stores are actually without the loan. We did it ourselves. So if you compare to Blue Bottle and Phil's, they all took money a little earlier than us. In our metrics, if you guys have been in our lines, we're pretty much the best in class in the U.S. And so we didn't even know. We just didn't think so many people wanted boba. And so when we expanded, our stores have been getting bigger, if you noticed. And so our next 6 stores are all pretty big. Our LA stores, our next New York store, our next Bay Area stores, they're all big. They're all homegrown. So we were just an INC 500 this last week. And the editor they were like, in the food and beverage category, we're number 9. But we're the only truly homegrown one. And they're like, how'd you guys do it? And then we're just like, the fans. Usually it's also a portfolio. In our world, it's portfolio management. Like if you have 10 stores, not all 10 are going to be home runs. If you've been to any of our stores, each one is a home run. So we got very, very lucky, and we have a great support. Many of you guys are our fans. Like we could have never done this because we just didn't think it was going to. Yeah, thanks, guys. It's all you guys, seriously.
Clap on cue.
And in San Francisco, like we're kind of like the homegrown San Francisco people. Yeah. So there's like LA rivalry, and then there's this New York rivalry. And then everybody knows we kind of represent San Francisco, right? So when we're in LA, there's this boba shops in LA, and then you can see that you're like, why are you here? And I'm like, are you spying? And I'm like, no, I like your matcha. That's literally why I'm here. But there's like this rivalry. So we have like our fan base now, and now we're kind of turning the corner where most people know we're really positioned against a Starbucks. I wouldn't say against Phil's because I like them, but like most people say we're probably, instead of a coffee run, we've been telling people it's a boba run. And in San Francisco, we see that. All our stores, we see you guys at Square, Twitter. I was at the stores today, and I see all the J. Crew people walking into our Hayes Valley store. You guys are from Uber, like that's what we wanted 6 years ago when we started all this. So we're like super grateful. You can tell, like when we talk about it, we're just super happy. It's just, we got very, very lucky when we started.
I still can't get my mind around what makes Boba Guys different than any traditional like restaurant type of hospitality, just general restaurant chain, right? Hospitality chain, food and beverage chain, really. Is it the way you guys run your business? Is it a technology aspect? Is it the way you train, the way you think about growth and expansion? Clearly, you didn't take that much venture capital. How do you think of your guys' company different than traditional food and beverage?
I think, so much of it is culture. I think it's like, especially people that have come in the early days when we were a pop-up, I think it was really more theirs than ours. It was like this thing that they could call their own that was like, whether it was Asian American or you were a foodie or you just liked things that were super underground and kind of up and coming. They kind of made it their own, and so a lot of people don't know. But when we started, we only had 3 drinks every week, and every week we would test a new flavor, and so that's how we kind of built our initial menu. Was
a
just
lean
like
startup type of lab.
It was literally a textbook, because it was the MVP with the pop up. It was really lean on the product choices, and we just kind of iterated. But there was always this fan base, and we wrote a column for a Good Magazine, chronicling each week like what was it like to be an entrepreneur, especially in the food space. And so there was just so many, like if you look at our fans today now, like there's just so much ownership into it. And I think it does feel a little bit like a cultural movement. So that's why when the New York Times thing happened, we were like kind of quiet because there was a lot of the people that spoke up for us. And so some of them were more militant, like Angry Asian Man. But like I think it was like it was like, you know, it felt like it was like just as much theirs as it was ours, and that was really cool. And so when we go to new neighborhoods, and especially like we're going into LA, but like even things south of here, like San Carlos, where people are like scratching their head and they're like, why don't you go to Palo Alto, or why don't you go to like these places, Burlingame, or these places where they think that we would go? It's because we think that we can build a culture around it and that people will support it, and it's like and so we've just been really lucky. And so it's just, I think the culture really is the secret sauce. I'm jumping ahead probably, but honestly, like, you can copy our ingredients, you could copy our branding, because we've seen a lot of knockoffs. You can copy almost everything, and a lot of places have, if Starbucks wanted to do it, they have way more money than us. A lot of places have more money than us, especially if they're franchising, they can scale faster. We don't franchise. So it really just boils down to the culture. It's like there's like this intangible element that people feel like this is just as much their company. And they're always like in our ear about like, hey, have you guys tried this this flavor? I saw this on my travels. They're like always in our ear about it, and it's great. And so they own it as much as we do, and so it's pretty awesome to see.
I might also add that you can copy all that. I think I learned this in business school. They teach you this in your marketing branding classes, where they're like, you can copy formulas, you can get anything copied, but you can't copy a soul. So if I were to say that, you can't copy Boba Guys' soul. And I always talk about a lot. I mean, some people know we basically are writing a book with the major publisher. So 18 months, if you have another one, we'll sell our book. But we want to write, we want the title to be a company with a soul. And what a soul is, it's like an essence of something that outlives its body. And our favorite company in the world actually is not Everlane, although we love it, is actually Patagonia. And then the founder, Yvon Chouinard, said this thing where he said he's obsessed with building a 100-year-old company. He has a great book. You guys should all read it. It's called Let My People Go Surfing, The Education of a Reluctant Businessman. And in that, it was about how do you build a company that can last. Because Ben and I could honestly, anybody can really build a company that's hot for 5-6 years. I actually think that's where people like, don't give us that much credit. This is during
Not anyone, but
oh, okay. Enough people. But can Boba Guys last 10, 15 years? We hope we do. And I think that's where we don't want you guys to talk about us. I remember that one time those two founders sat up there, and then now they're like living on the streets, or like
Tenderloin.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, I know. The worst story to tell, right? You want to be like, hey, I remember watching them, and now they were maybe not the next Howard Schultz for Starbucks, but like they were the next In-N-Out. That's another company we look up to, and I think we think, how do we make ourselves sustainable? And I think that's adding a soul.
So I think a lot of people think of Boba Guys as not just a F&B company. Really, it's a tech-enabled startup, right? And that's how you guys have spoke about it in the past. Can you explain to our audience here what it means to be a tech-enabled F&B startup?
I think tech plays a part for sure, but I think a broader sense is like we're an experience company. I think what we do, we don't see ourselves as food and beverage, but our mission is to bridge cultures. And so you do that even before they set foot in your store. You do that on social media. You do that as soon as they pull up to one of your stores, even before they take their first sip. And so all of that is experience. All of that is even our personalities and who we are, and we're in the stores a lot. All of that is experience. And so technology, yes, there is a piece of it. Obviously, we've both had startups in the past as well. And but I think we have the same philosophy that it should be in our world kind of invisible and seamless. And so we know Wilson from Square, and we were on a lot of early betas, and I like to joke that we were probably the toughest PMs there, because we were on a lot of betas, and we ripped up a lot of betas because we're really in the trenches, and we're testing, they're dog fooding the product every day. And so if it doesn't work for us, it's probably not going to work for 1,000 other vendors. And so so technology does play a big part. And I think the thing that we think about a lot is what's to come, what are our stores of the future. And a lot of that is automation, whether we like it or not. And so how do we talk very candidly, because our thing is transparency. We talk very candidly with our team about like, hey, automation is coming, but it should be done in a way that's actually relieving pain points. Whether it's throughput through the stores. And so, we're working on some, I don't even think we can talk about it, but we're working on projects that are going to help with both throughput, but we're trying to apply the same way we do with our stores in terms of experience, a human lens through it. And so I think the thing people get wrong with automation is that it's always like this like kind of brute force thing that's super hyper efficient, but a little bit soulless. And so it's like, even though, you know, at Eatsa, right, there's a kiosk, you don't have to deal with a cashier, or you go to Safeway nowadays, you can check out yourselves, you know. Obviously that's coming to stores and future restaurants. You can already see fine dining's dying, fast casual is coming up. So how do you do that in a way that's really you add a humanistic element to it, and how do you create a delightful experience, even if you do remove a person? Like, does that mean that actually customer service is even better because then you have someone roving and actually caring to people, like at Chick-Fil-a or whatever? You know, you got the old lady going. You know, is there what can we do? Because we are directly influencing a lot of the product that is coming out that has very much to do with automation. So I think that's our take on it, is it's really about experience and less so about technology. But when the technology is there, it should be seamless.
Well said. A lot of questions, sir, but let's just skip to the last one that we usually ask in fish sauce fashion. Think of questions you guys have in the audience, but we usually ask speakers what is their secret sauce as individuals, but we'd like to ask you two together as co-founders, what is your secret sauce together? What is that chemistry that you guys have that makes you guys Boba guys?
It's like asking a married couple.
Yeah.
What do you like about the other person?
We've been married 6 years.
Yeah. No prenup.
I don't got my ring on.
So I think, well, a lot of people have described us, whether it's our team, and we've said it, I think, in an interview before. I mean, we're like Kirk and Spock, you know, and it's not a good or bad. It's like some days, my favorite, I like Spock more, and I don't know if he likes Kirk more, but it's very equal, but they have their own role, right? You know, Bin is very rational, despite him being an artist. It's actually, the irony is that he's the artist, but he has a really strong business sense. And I'm the business guy, but I like aesthetics a lot too. And so it's more like Kirk and Spock. And because I went to business school, I'm more of like an alpha. So I do sometimes, sorry, it's weird to say that, but I guess, whatever.
Only an alpha would say that.
Yeah. So like I'm used to being in charge. I've always been like, you know, ASB, all that kind of stuff. So when we met with Bin,
I can tell.
Yeah. So we always kind of knew our roles, and I think that's helped a lot. And I would say we're pretty self-aware too, so we never get out of hand. I don't think neither of us have ever had, unless you're gonna say in front of everybody now, I've had ego trips or like I've like been so unreasonable.
Well, what's crazy is I think, like, you know, we've been working together for 6 years, but we've really never disagreed on anything big, which is really, really rare.
All that counseling helped.
Yeah, exactly. It's like super rare. So I think it's like, it's just been it's good complementary partnership, and so we've got each other's back, and so it's been fun. It's just I would say, like, you know, co-founders are the hardest thing to find, and I don't know.
You think Tinder and all dating is hard? Co-founders way harder.
So hard.
Because there's more money. You need a contract up front,
Yep.
and it's. People always ask, and we honestly say we just got lucky. It wasn't like we searched for each other. So, like, people find each other in like I don't know, at bars and clubs. You find co-founders at like current jobs. I think that's kind of like my kind of analogy for it.
Cool. So we're going to switch it up a little bit. I know people have written on postcards, but we're going to ask the audience to say their questions live.
Yeah, I want to see your face.
So Andrew and Ben can see your face. So if you have a question, raise your hand, and we'll bring the mic to you.
Oh, cool. That's a lot.
You're the first.
That's awesome.
Okay. Hi, I'm Susie.
Hi, Susie.
What I was always wondering, and I hope you don't think it's a stupid question, but why did you guys pick an aardvark as
I
your
knew
logo?
you were gonna ask that.
for
You want me to answer it? Okay, so yeah, we like to keep it super vague, because like sometimes it's fun to see little kids like invent, like, oh, this is why they did it.
He has a name.
Yeah. A lot of people say it's an anteater. A lot of people say that we met at UCI, which we didn't.
Go Bears.
It's an aardvark. And part of it is because a couple of reasons. I'll throw out a couple, and I'll keep some mysterious. One of them is that it has a built-in straw. So you look at the nose, it has a built-in straw. The second one is that it has a no intellectual property attached to it. So we own the trademarks, so don't try to do a aardvark company. We already got it. And then the last one is that I think it's a good analogy for what we do, which is boba. And I mean that because it's, an aardvark looks familiar. You're kind of sure, you're not quite sure where it's from or what country it's from, but it looks approachable. And then when I rendered it, I wanted to do it because I know a lot of boba shops that either had tea in their name or they were super cutesy or it was like really bright colors. And the way that we did it was like more of like like a woodblock print. And so like some from the O'Reilly books, like those old like, hey, learn Ruby on Rails. So like really kind of serious but still playful, And so that's kind of what our outlook is on boba in general. And so I think it's a good analogy for boba, and aardvark's the perfect mascot for that.
So I used to cover the restaurant sector in the financial world, and I studied Danny Meyer working with Shake
Love his
Shack.
book, Setting the
That's like
Table.
that's his big hero.
Gotta read that book.
Exactly. And when he was building Shake Shack, he went around the country and like studied different burgers. I'm sure you read the books, obviously, Did you guys go through that similar process in finding the best boba, and how did you think about building the product?
Great question. Actually, I love it. Are you from Food and Wine, Bon Appetit, or? Here's where we start. Because now most people, we're getting these, like, the press that's coming to us is less about the startup world because we're kind of more mature. People are coming from the food. And we love food, but the one thing it's hard to talk about is that it's really subjective. So it's like, how do you, especially in tech, you take objective things. You know when you perform because you can see metrics. Food, I mean, we could read Yelp reviews. Oh, your boba is not like other boba. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, it was like, did Chipotle get a lot of backlash when it didn't taste like a regular Mexican burrito? No, it's Tex-Mex, a new category. We always say we're like evolving. We're like, there's Richard Pryor, there's Eddie Murphy, and then there's Aziz Ansari. We're Aziz Ansari. You don't compare the two. And so, actually, I like, it's like DJ Khaled. Like, we like collaborating with everybody, and we make hits. So when you think about food, we're like, it's like DJ Khaled. Actually, I'll use that analogy. It's like DJ Khaled. I've never used this before, by the way. It's not rehearsed.
New material.
Yeah. Is that like, when he's looking, he's like, oh, Bieber's really good, or, Big Sean's good, or whoever it is. We do have to know the industry. So we do drink a lot of, I obviously look like I drink a lot of boba. I do drink a lot of boba. He's the straw, I'm the boba. So
That's the secret sauce.
yeah, it's a secret sauce. There's a lot that could go a lot of different ways. So when we were going around, we actually would drive. One of my favorite. I did grow up here in middle school, high school. So there's this place in Irving called Wonderful Foods. He didn't know what that was because he didn't grow up here. So I drag him all the way to Wonderful Foods in Irving to get boba, and we would do that a lot. We'd drive in the South Bay, Fantasia. I'd take him all over, or when we were traveling, we're always experimenting. So if you're actually going to start your own startup, I kind of want to broaden it. I highly recommend you have to know your industry, and you should be an expert. People say it's like the $10,000 rule. We had our 10,000 boba rule. Like, we drank, I drank a lot of boba. So we know what's good boba, what's bad boba. What's interesting, though, is in that time, which is where this goes more into Bon Appetit, food, and wine, boba is hard because it's technically different depending where you are. So people are like, there's a term called QQ. It's like the perfect chewiness. It's like translated. And what makes something perfectly QQ, perfectly chewy? And we have people who are like, oh, it's too hard, it's too soft. I'm like, that's Goldilocks. How do you know? And I think that's just on the boba, not the milk tea and the sweetness. So the way we kind of do it is how can we make it so we tell the story, and what people drink is actually the experience and the story, not necessarily the objective sweetness level or the texture, because that you're never going to win. So when we figure that out, we weren't tasting other people's boba anymore, really. And most people know nowadays, Ben and I rarely drink other people's boba, mainly because we drank almost everything. I just rarely, you guys should come to me. I rarely hear of new boba shops nowadays. I'm in LA, I drank like boba 3 times already. Now I just drink it, expense it, and I dump it. Like, I just need to taste, just figure out what they're doing.
Great. So I know there's a lot of questions. How about we do a quick, I'm going to go around, grab like 3 questions all at once, and maybe you guys can kind of answer that in a very quick way. So let's try that. Who has questions still? Okay, so anyone in the back? Okay, so we'll just pass the mic around and just ask your question, and then later they'll answer at the very end. Just ask.
So if Boba Guys had stopped at expanding at 2 stores, do you think you'd be satisfied, and you think you'll still continue running it?
What up?
I don't.
Wait. Just get some questions. Really
I know. Oh, okay.
just ask your question.
I'm Taiwanese American, and I read that boba comes from Taichung, Taiwan. Is that true?
Okay. And one more question. I know there's a lot of questions. Any other question? Okay. Cool.
Do you feel differently about taking flavors from non-Asian cultures versus Asian cultures? And what would you add to the food cultural appropriation conversation?
Wow, good question.
There's a lot going on.
like that one.
Try
Did
your
you
best.
did you say after 2 stores would we be satisfied? I think we would be happy. I think the pop-up was like I think we were happy when we did the pop-up. It was like we're obviously you don't do a boba pop-up for the money. There was a lot of opportunity cost. That's why it took us 3 stores to really quit and go full time. And so it's always been a labor of love. So if we only got to 2 stores, yeah, I think we would be happy. We'd go back to our corporate jobs, or maybe we start another company. I've never been asked that, but I think
That's where Ben and I, we're not exactly the same expression-wise, but values-wise, we're pretty simple. Like, most people are like, they say to me, like, you don't dress like you are very successful, like, or you have a lot of money. And I'm like, well, it's because I grew up poor. Like, it's really the truth. And so, like, for us, success was never our thing. We honestly did it because we're like, can we get people in the mission that are not Asian to drink boba? That was really the goal. And it is true. And it is in Taichung, there's 2 brands they fight over, like Sun Sui Tang and Han in Taiwan. Han in Tea Room, which is actually there's one in here in
the
San Francisco.
first one though.
But there's a debate. For the record, that's actually why we have to write this book. There's a debate that's one whole chapter dedicated to the origin of boba, and there's this huge fight. We think we have an answer though, but you can read the internet. If you're from Taiwan, I'm sure you could back it up. Like, there's this fight between 2 companies over this. Oh, the last one.
Yeah, I'll just have a quick anecdote on that one. I know Andrew wants to talk about it too, but I think we started in the Mission District, and one of our most popular drinks is the horchata boba, right? And I think for us it was really because we went to taquerias every day for lunch, and so and I'm from Texas, and so I think we just really love the food, and so anytime we think about a drink like that, we do think pretty deeply about like the cultural connotations. And I think for horchata, what really validated it was every time in the mission you'll see a bunch of hipsters, bunch of techies, some kids, maybe some moms in strollers, and then you'll see like a Hispanic woman, and they'll I know because we're there working the register, and they'll order, and they don't speak any English at all. And they'll speak in Spanish, or they'll ask if you can get rung up in Spanish, and they order a horchata. And it's because we actually are one of the few that make it from scratch and make it the way that traditionally it was made. Whereas now, if you go to a lot of taquerias, they'll use like kerns, or they'll use some sort of like they won't build a base for it. Whereas we actually do it pretty authentically. And so I think that's really is like paying respects to any culture that you're enamored with, or you're taken to. And I think a lot of people catch flack like where they see maybe people that aren't from that ethnicity trying to, I guess they call it Columbusing another person's food. And I know there's a lot of people catch flack for that. But I think, like places like Pok Pok, where they're doing Thai food and they're really shining a light on Thai food, I think that's amazing, And so it's not really about what they look like, but kind of where their heart's at. And I think that we think about that for culture.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to overstep our territory. I mean, I think people like Eddie Huang, I think, are probably the pioneers of it. And Eddie, we just saw him in LA. I think he's probably the person I look up to the most when we talk about cultural conversations. You should watch his episodes of Huang's World. Our kind of take is related to, I think I'm going to go back to the music analogy. Like, when you're, like, bringing back old school, like, and you're like Avicii, and he's bringing back, sorry, is this the right crowd for it? Avicii? Calvin Harris, and he's bringing back like something from the 80s or 90s. Like, nobody says, well, you got that beat, that melody from a Grandmaster Flash song. Nobody really does that if you trust that Avicii knows his music, if he knows his taste. What we see in cultural appropriation has been put it really well, is it all comes about intent and the heart. Where is it coming from? So that's actually why, if you notice, Boba Guys doesn't do anything outside of Latin cuisine and Asian. Could we make Turkish coffee? Could we make a London fog? Could we make certain types of European drinks, which we know how to make, especially if it's coffee or tea? It usually comes from Asia anyways. We should know how to make it. But we don't. Why? Because I think if we did it too much, people are like, you're not European. Did you grow up in the United States? Did you grow up in Europe? Why? I don't buy it. But with Hispanic cuisine, I grew up in South San Francisco for my high school. If you know that high school is half Filipino, half Hispanic. And that's how I grew up. I literally grew up with horchata, menudo, pozole. He and I grew up around a lot of Hispanic people. So when we did horchata, even our team, ask our team who are all Hispanic, they know that we truly embrace the culture. But we couldn't say the same about Irish culture or all that. So I think it is appropriation in that there's a lot of these people who are there's that big pho thing on Bon Appetit. Well, they didn't really understand the origin of pho. I think if they tried and said, here is what we're going to do and kind of told the story behind why, I think they would have gotten less flack. And so I'll kind of end on this thing where it's come up recently because the movie's about to come out, is the Bruce Lee story. Well, we're in the city of San Francisco, so we should know the Bruce Lee story, by the way. Especially in the room of Asians, we should know the Bruce Lee story. Because he got a lot of, I didn't swear yet, so I usually drop the F-bomb or S-bomb. In the last one we were with you guys, I was sick that day, and I was dropping so many F-bombs, I think near the end.
What's the S-bomb?
Shit.
Oh.
He doesn't know.
You have to know your shit because, with Bruce Lee, he took a lot of shit because he was teaching Kung Fu to Westerners. I don't know if you were probably too young, but he got a lot of shit for this. Read the old news, a ton of flack for this. And that's kind of essentially what happened. And then there was this famous fight between him and Wanjak Man and this Shaolin monk who was basically saying, no, you're not allowed to teach it. It's cultural to me. You should not share it with non-Chinese. I actually don't think that's how the world works. I think the world's better, and we all see this. Some of you guys know we work with the government. We help small businesses with the Obama administration and the other unnamed administration. So we do small business guys. We're progressives. So we think that comes up a lot because people always say I'll just say it. You guys are boba for white people, and I actually go the other way. And because I'm the more outspoken one, I'm the one who usually answers these cultural questions. I say, well, isn't that racist too? It can't go both ways. Boba is not just for us, by us, for only Asian people. The world does not benefit that way. It's how do you remix? How does Avicii, Calvin Harris, Chainsmokers, whoever your favorite DJ is, how do they remix it and make it their own? It's not like Aziz is stealing material from Chappelle and Pryor and all that, even though he looks up to them. He's making it his own. He's creating a new genre. We essentially, if I go to Taiwan, I wear Boba Guys, I would say half of the young population know there's these two American kids bringing Boba and making it a hip for celebrities and all that stuff. And they embrace us over there, but over here, we actually hear reverse discrimination more than we hear about cultural appropriation. We hear that Asians are why are you doing it for them? And I'm like, no. This is the wrong way. This is where you got to bring everybody together. This is what I mean by bridging cultures. So it sounds a little like Eddie. I'm going to give credit to him because he's talked a lot about it, and we've talked a lot about it. But really, it is about bringing people together. So I agree it happens where, it sounds like it looks at face value. It's about, we do horchata boba. But I think most people buy that it's authentic. That's not the hard part. The hard part is going back the other way.
Got it. If you guys like this topic, our next season, we actually talked to Mr. Chu's for the restaurant. Yeah.
John M. Chu's dad, yeah? His dad is the director. That's his dad.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
hit him up for Crazy Rich Asian tickets.
Yeah, and you talk. He talks a lot about this topic too. So if you guys want to hear more season 2. But anyway, I think we're out of time. Yeah. So we're gonna end on saying, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Bebe. Thank you, Boba guys. Thank you, NAAAP. Thank you, Christian Edwards, our editor, making us sound better than we actually are every single time. But before we end, just a reminder, we do have T-shirts there if you want to rock and support the mission, suggested donation, and subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, and listen to some of the Boba guys and Bebes. So last thing, if you guys want to do a group picture, we're going to do one here. I know it's going to be a logistical nightmare, but we'll attempt to do it. So thank you again.
Thank you.
What's your secret sauce?